Here we're interested in eternal voidness. When there's nothing concocted, when there's no concocting, then that is the eternal voidness. The voidness which is the eternal present, unending present, the unending now. True voidness is this eternal voidness, totally free from me and mine. So in the void life is like this, to not attach to any meanings of things. Then there is voidness, nibbana. This is something strange, something new for many of us, because we've never met it before. Voidness is something very strange for us because all we know is busyness. So it's time to study deeply, to investigate, until we find what it is to be void. Then we meet a whole other kind of life, the life of voidness. And there's no infatuation, obsession, compulsion. This is the life that is under the mastery of mindfulness and wisdom, so that no ego arises. This life of wisdom doesn't give ego a chance. Whoever's got the life of mindfulness and wisdom, go raise your hand. If you're living the life of wisdom, please raise your hand. There's a fable one should remember about this. There's a boy who didn't know any better. He jumped on the back of a dog or of a horse, and the horse ran. But he had never ridden a horse before, and so the horse just ran all over, taking him all over the place, not knowing where he was going. This is how our lives are. We don't know where we're coming from. We don't know where we're going. We just jump onto the horse's back and hold on, and it runs all over the place. This is how it is when we're just riding the backs of the defilements, when there's no genuine mindfulness and wisdom. Previously, we didn't really know life. We didn't understand it, how to develop it, how to adjust it, how to master it. So we're at the mercy of the horse running wildly. All the concocting, all the defilements. Because of attachment in ego, life becomes a chain. As soon as there's the ego, then there's the ego's wife, the ego's children, the ego's home, the ego's possessions, the ego's cars. And so starting with the ego there develops this long chain of me and mine. Think about how heavy that is, everywhere we go, dragging this heavy chain with us. This long chain of ego and all the things clung to by ego. And all this chained life changes automatically when there's no ego. This long chain of husband, wife, children, we can just drop it immediately by ending self. And then husband, wife, children are no problem. Whenever there is self, then life is under the power, under the control of something, whether another person or some object. When our life is under the power of something else, then we're not free within ourselves. To be under this control and domination. All of us here, all of you, don't have this freedom. When we're born, After the moment of our birth, we don't really know this world. We don't understand it. So it's necessary for the child to experience the world sufficiently to grow and mature. We're still deceived by the self. We don't really know the world until the self can no longer deceive us. Once there's the self, the atta, then we sink into the world. We sink or drown in the world. But once there's no atta, then we're above the world, we're free of the world, no longer trapped by the world. But once there is self, this ego, then all the kinds of selfishness follow from it. All these kinds of selfishness bite life, bite its owner. Love bites, hate bites, anger bites, fear bites. Because of this self, life bites its owner. Toss away the self, the atta, and life doesn't bite its owner. When there's self, look carefully and see how life bites. As soon as there's atta, it bites. Just the smallest difficulty or inconvenience arises, and we're oppressed, we're offended, we're upset by it because of self. But when there's no self, this life can't bite. But now we're striving to follow the footsteps of the arahants, the worthy ones, so that this life won't be able to bite us anymore. When the mind is framed or imprisoned, be very careful of these excessive cultures, the culture of excess. It builds prisons very quickly before we even notice it. All the excess things build prisons for the self. The self is the prison, and then there's no freedom. One must be above this frame, above the casing, the prison. When one is free of atta, of self, then one fulfills the meaning of the word Buddha, to be awakened, to be the one who knows, is awakened, and is blossomed into a perfect freshness of life. This awakened life is the opposite of the life that is asleep, the life of superstition, of sayasat, or sleepology. Most of us live our lives as if we are asleep, caught in all kinds of superstitious beliefs. But the opposite of this is Buddhadasa, Buddhology, the life of awakening. When there's self, we're asleep with superstition. When there's no self, we awaken into Buddhology, into the science of awakening. With no self, then life becomes transcendent, becomes Lokuttara. It's above the world. Another way of expressing this is when there's no self, then life becomes real. It's really life. It's the transcendent life, the life of transcendence, the genuine life, where there's no deception, no falseness or fakery. Then one has total freedom, the freedom of mindfulness and wisdom, not the freedom of the criminal or the selfish person. But now, we're the intellectual slaves of those who are more intelligent than us. But if one is truly the disciple of the Buddha, then one must never be the intellectual slave of another, even the Buddha. One should, in terms of our own intelligence, our own understanding, one must never become the slave of another. In the Kalama Sutta, the Buddha makes this very, very careful. He said, don't just believe the words of someone merely because they are my teacher. That samana is my teacher. Even if we're the slave of someone who is right or correct, as soon as we become the intellectual slave, it becomes wrong. No matter how right a teacher might be, or even the Buddha, to become his intellectual slave is to make it all wrong. So don't be the intellectual slave of anyone. Instead of believing the authority of others, believe in the reasons that appear directly in things. We know how to look at things. They'll display their reasons and reasoning. But when we speak of being a slave, we make the exception of Buddhadasa, which means slave of the Buddha. Because this doesn't mean being an intellectual slave of the Buddha. It means to, with the highest wisdom, to serve the Buddha. To serve the Buddha out of wisdom, not out of fear or cowardice or dependence. So then by removing self, then life is fulfilled, life is perfect, life is complete. It sounds strange to us to take something away, and we get the life that is full, that is perfect. Remove age, remove self, remove the age concerned with self. And then life is perfect, is full. For those who are still foolish, they can be deceived by the ghost. But when we remove the self, there's no ghost that can deceive us, can trick us. So which is better, the life of being deceived and tormented by ghosts, or the life where no ghost or demon could touch us? So we're speaking about the life without self, which is the opposite of the life of self. The devas and the demons, they laugh their heads off at the person who's full of self. The person who's full of atta is so ridiculous, make such a fool out of themselves, but the devas, the angels, just can't help but laugh. There's a whole other kind of life where the demons, the spirits, the ghosts, the angels, they worship us, they honor us. This is the life where there's no self. This is the highest blessing. You're not yet asleep yet, are you? Because we haven't finished yet. Tickle each other or something to keep yourselves awake. Quench the self, quench attachment. We've been speaking about the advantages, the benefits of quenching, different aspects of the benefits that come from quenching age, quenching self. The benefits of what? The benefits of ending age, of ending time, of ending self, of ending all attachment and ignorance. Ending age has nothing to do with killing oneself. When we end our age, doesn't mean we commit suicide. It just means that when we end age, there will be no more death for us. When we end age, we've already died to ourselves. This is to die before dying. When you die in this way, it's really nice. Then you don't have to die again. So to die to the ego before the body dies. This has great value. This is a wonderful benefit, to die before dying. To be free. To be no longer imprisoned by death. To no longer be intimidated by death. Then one needn't worry about death, because by ending age, one ends all problems of death. Then one can sample one can taste the highest flavor of dying before death. The lightness, the purity, the calmness, the freedom of this highest lightness and freedom of dying before death, to die before dying. The fruit of this is to be above all concocting. There's nothing that can condition us anymore. This is the meaning of adammayata, where nothing can concoct, can fabricate, can make up the mind anymore. This is adammayata, or unconcoctability. Then you'll be at peace, you'll be at ease everywhere you go, everything you do. Wherever we go, whatever we do, there's nothing that can concoct us. Ordinarily, things are concocting us, fabricating us, making us into this and that all the time. Speak in grammatical terms, one is neither subject nor object. This is what it is to be truly free. One is neither the actor or the acted against, the subject or the object. These are benefits of ending age, ending ego, ending attachment. Finally, what's difficult for us to hear is that we don't get anything. If we're still getting something, it's not really void. When we're not getting or losing, that is voidness. We're still getting and losing, whether money, fame, power, attention. That's not voidness. Is this frightening? Is it frightening to not have anything? No wealth, no possessions. When there's voidness, then nibbana is our wealth. Then one is nowhere. There's no need to be anywhere. All of this covers the benefits of ending age. There's nothing left that needs to be done. If something has to be done externally, then it is done. But all the duties of the mind are finished. The mind can do whatever it needs to do without ego. The best way to end self is to live with adammayata. Then one is still, one is immovable in correctness. This stillness in correctness is what it is to be at adammayata. In this stillness, one neither laughs nor cries. There's neither gladness nor sadness. Nothing is delicious or distasteful. To be glad is to be busy in one way. To be sad is to be busy in another. It's better to get rid of all of them, to not have anything to do with either gladness or sadness. To neither be positive nor negative. To neither laugh nor cry. This is what is meant by adammayata. So sacrifice the self so that one can live with adammayata. This is what it is to dwell, to be with the state of mind where nothing can concoct it. Nothing can shake the mind. The mind doesn't tremble anymore. It's perfectly still in the correctness of adammayata. So please remove the self, the ego, the selfishness, and age. And one lives with the eternal Buddha. Have you ever heard of the eternal Buddha? Do you have any idea what the eternal Buddha is? The temporary, ordinary Buddha this is something we know about. There are different ones with different names. Many different names for these temporary Buddhas who arise for a time and then parinibbana. But to see the eternal Buddha means to see the Dhamma. The Gautama Buddha said, the one who sees the Dhamma sees me, the one who sees me sees the Dhamma. This Buddha we're all familiar with, the one with the history, the legends, all the stories. This is just one individual temporary Buddha went through certain experiences. This isn't the eternal Buddha, or the Dhamma Buddha, the Buddha that is Dhamma, the Buddha of Dhamma. This is the real Buddha. The temporary Buddha, the personal historical Buddha, isn't the real Buddha. If we study the Buddha's life, we learn only about the personal Buddha, the external Buddha. We learn almost nothing about the eternal Buddha, the inner Buddha. All the stories about the Buddha's life tell us only about this superficial, external Buddha. But the eternal Buddha has no need to be born, to be enlightened, or to parinibbana. When we talk about the birth of the Buddha, the enlightenment, the parinibbana of the Buddha, we're speaking exclusively of the personal Buddha, the external, historical, temporary Buddha. But to meet the true eternal Buddha, one must finish age, finish atta and attaniya. As long as ignorance obstructs, gets in the way, we don't see the Buddha. But when we move aside this curtain of ignorance, then we can meet the genuine Buddha. So there are these two Buddhas, the eternal and the temporary. The Buddha nature is also eternal. The Buddha nature is like a seed. It must be planted and cared for, nurtured so that it can thrive. So please know the difference between the eternal Buddha and the ordinary social, historical, personal Buddha. We must train our minds to be free of atta, so that our minds, a properly trained mind, can unite with the eternal Buddha, or what we could call the Buddha nature. Get rid of the self, and this becomes easy. So a very simple metaphor is that the genuine Buddha is sitting behind the curtain of your own ignorance. If you go in the spiritual theater from this side, the first picture, which is behind the door, you don't even see it because the door's in the way. So nobody sees it. Nobody sees this picture that tells us that the Buddha is sitting behind the curtain of our own ignorance. So people don't know where to find the Buddha. They go looking all over the place, going on pilgrimages, because they don't know where to find the Buddha. He's just sitting there behind the curtain of our own stupidity. So we say the Buddha is behind your own stupidity. Slice through that curtain, cut it to shreds, and then you'll meet the Buddha, and you'll see the Buddha. This is the curtain of ignorance, of not knowing. By removing self, this curtain is destroyed. Is there anything better than this? Can you find anything in this world better than this? Getting free of the self. So one can even say one becomes the Buddha. If there's eternal voidness, then one becomes also eternal Buddha. To eternal voidness, there's always the Buddha that knows, is awakened, fully blossomed. So once you know that in Nibbana there's no dancing. The Nibbana is eternal voidness, where one meets the eternal Buddha. So there's nothing changing and concocting anymore. So we've been speaking about Nirota. So we're going to take a break for a little while. We'll ask some of our friends to manage things for a while we rest. In addition to knowing what it is to fast, to abstain from food, one also should know what it is to go without sleep, to stay up all night speaking about Dhamma, hearing the Dhamma. So whoever feels like talking is being invited to speak, especially if anybody wants to disagree with what he said, they're welcome to say so. So I think there'll be a fourth talk, maybe around 2 a.m. The bell will ring about 15 minutes, 20 minutes before. So see you later. Okay. Good morning. Instead of at 2 a.m., the fourth talk was postponed till 8 a.m., but it's been raining, and so we've moved to the big ship for the fourth talk on the path. Saha, Dhammika friends, and Brahmacharya, those who follow the Brahmacharya. Today's fourth talk on ending age will be about the past. Talking about ending the meaning of age. We'll be looking at the fourth item of the Ariya Satya. The first noble truth is to know what it is. The second is to know where it comes from. The third noble truth is to know for what purpose it exists. And the fourth noble truth is, we'll be successful through what method, what approach. So today we'll talk about the method for ending self, for ending the ego, for ending age. Please listen carefully, although the conditions aren't so beneficial today. This word, Dhamma, means duty, or it means what must be done, the way of practice. When there is practice, there must be the way of practice, or the path that is traveled. So we call it the magga, the path, the way. When there is practice, we need some way of practice, some path to follow. So the fourth noble truth is called the path, or magga ariya sacha. The path that leads to the quenching, the ending of age. Now let's review our memory, something we should remember. So we've been speaking about dukkha and the ego, which is the basis of dukkha. The age that is the basis of dukkha, the cause of it. Then we've been talking, the last talk was about the quenching of age, the quenching of the ego, which means not so much to put it out, but to not let it happen, not let it arise. So now we're talking of the way, the path or method that doesn't let age arise. The word mindfulness or sati all by itself has very broad and important meanings. We can speak about being mindful in removing attachment, to have sati, mindfulness in removing upadana, especially to have sati in removing ahangara and mamamgara, I-making and my-making. Those who live in the monastery are familiar with these kind of words, but for ordinary people who've never heard these words, we can speak more simply about ego and egoism. All these thinking about I, mine, about ego can be removed with mindfulness. We can use synonyms here also. The Buddha spoke of a laxative or a purgative, to take the medicine which purges us, to practice mindfulness, or the 10 samatha. These are the purgatives which purges us of ego. The 10 samatha are the 8 samatha of the Noble Eightfold Path, plus the 2 samatha which are the result of the path, which arise from the path. The fact that we only know about the 8 factors of the path is still rather childish. If we only know about these, our knowledge is not yet mature. There's the right view of samadhi, right aim, sankappa, right action, samanta, right speech, samavaja, maintaining life properly, sama-ajiva, sama-vayama, right mindfulness, samasati, sama-samadhi, right concentration. But then, when the path comes together, there is sama-vicha, right knowledge, knowing things as they really are. And then sama-vimutti, right liberation. These 10 samatha together are called the purgative, which purges all the poison and things that shouldn't be there out of the stomach. There's another word, the vamana, the vomitory, the medicine that makes us throw up all ego, to vomit out ego and all the I-making and my-making. If the purgative is called virejana, the vomitory is vamana. Or another name for these 10 samatha is pavana. Which is to bathe, to cleanse oneself of all I-making and my-making. If it's a cleansing, it's called dovana. So to have mindfulness in eating this purgative, in taking the purgative, in taking the vomitory, so that we purge and vomit up all ego and ego. With having sati, seeing the three characteristics of impermanence and satisfactoriness and not self. Seeing, with sati, seeing deeply the nature of things. Seeing the kamaciti yana, the knowledge of the way things are, the way things naturally are in nature. If we really see all the dhamma chitti jnanas, the way things are standing in Dhamma, if we see all of them, then there arises the fading away of attachment. We become disenchanted with the objects of attachment, and attachment fades away. Then attachment is quenched. The ego and age are quenched. All of this is called the way of ending ego, of ending age, which in one short word is called the path. So we're talking about the way of practice, trying to make it more simple and easy to understand, instead of making it complicated. Having mindfulness in seeing things as they are. Just this one word, sati, mindfulness, can include the whole path. There are two systems of sati. There's the ordinary, natural system of sati called the four foundations of mindfulness. In general practice of sati, we call it the four foundations of mindfulness. But there's a more specific, a more refined and subtle system called anapanasati, mindfulness with breathing. Anything that comes and harms us, oppresses us, causes problems for us, we have mindfulness, seeing that it's not I, not mine. Having mindfulness in the ordinary activities of life, seeing that it's just nama and rupa. Whatever being sick or whatever problem arises, that it's just nama and rupa. Things that are beautiful, things that are ugly, it's just nama rupa, mind body. A big pile of money is just mind body. Whatever it is, just seeing that it's mind and body. Nama. Nama is the mind, the consciousness, the mental part of life. Rupa is the physical. So this basic practice of, with mindfulness, seeing everything as being merely nama and rupa. Seeing every person is just nama and rupa. Seeing all things is merely nama and rupa. Whatever is seen is rupa. That consciousness which sees is nama. When we see a person, that person is rupa. The mind which sees, which knows the person, is nama. When there's an accident of some sort, when usually we have an accident, we erupt with some coarse word, with some startled explanation, usually a very improper word that we can't say here. This is because we don't see it as just nama rupa. When some accident happens, when we say, oh, blankety blank, this is from not seeing, there's no mindfulness in seeing it all, it's just nama and rupa. For ordinary people who don't have very extensive knowledge, this is good enough for practicing the foundations of mindfulness, the satipatthana. Having mindfulness, seeing everything is just nama rupa. When we come to a more systematic, subtle, and complete way of practice, then we talk about the 16 lessons of anapanasati. This is something that the monks and novices don't pay any attention to. Been monks for years and they still don't know what the 16 objects of anapanasati are. There's the first tetrad about knowing the different kinds of breath, knowing how these breaths condition the body, and then knowing how to calm that conditioning so that the body is calm. Then there's the tetrad about the feelings, the piti, the sense of satisfaction that comes with calming the body. When that piti calms down, there's the cool joy or sukha. Then studying how these feelings concoct the mind, how they condition all kinds of thoughts and significances. Then there's the tetrad that deals with the mind, knowing all the different states of mind, knowing how to delight the mind, concentrating the mind, and then finally liberating the mind. And this brings us to the last tetrad, the most important steps about Dhamma, which is seeing things as they really are, seeing that things are impermanent, undependable, unsatisfying, imperfect, dukkata, seeing that they're not self, anattata, pursuing this deeper to see sunyata, voidness, sattata, thusness, and adammayata, uncontactability, to be unmanipulatable. And when reaching this profound insight of adammayata, then we become there's disenchantment with all the objects of attachment, all the things we've taken to be me and mine. And then we contemplate the fading away of that attachment, the virakha of attachment of me and mine. And then that attachment quenches. We contemplate the quenching of attachment. And then finally, the final lessons of throwing back all the objects of attachment to nature. This complete systematic practice of anapanasati is something that everyone can do, if only they were interested. If people would really pay attention to this, learn what it involves, then they can do it. but nobody's interested, nobody takes the time to understand how to practice it. And so they claim that it's too difficult, or beyond their ability, or it's too much, just full of excuses. But for those of us who have the ability to study this, it's within our ability to practice. For those who aren't willing to do this, we can at least practice being mindful that everything is just nama and rupa, that all experiences are just nama and rupa. In order to finish off, to wipe out age, we need to use one of these systems of mindfulness. The ordinary general one that isn't very focused or systematic, or the one that is a very refined technique. We've made a number of manuals that explain how to practice this. The information is there for whoever wants to find it. Read these books. Read these books and practice it, and little by little you'll understand. You'll understand it for yourself. The more you study it in practice, the more you'll see that this is the way the truth is. This is how things are. But now all we're doing is speaking for you to hear. You're just listening. But if that's all you do, you're not going to get very far. The thing is to take this knowledge, to take what we hear, and to take it off in practice. But if you don't listen first, you won't know how to practice. If we don't listen, we won't have the way of understand the method of practice. But we don't just listen for its own sake. We listen in order to take it and practice it. So we listen, and then we think about it. We yoniso manasikara. We reflect subtly, carefully, wisely, logically, reasonably in the mind until we understand more deeply, more truly how to practice. This must be subtle and refined, not just crudely thinking about things in a haphazard way, but systematically examining it from all angles. Compared to learning how to row a boat. To row a boat, a small boat in the ocean, is very difficult. To do it, one must go out there and practice. No matter how much someone tells one how to do it, one still can't do it until when we go out there and practice rowing the boat. Until we have the actual skill to row the boat straight to where we want to go. Now, no matter how much advice and instructions we get, we still don't know how to row our boat, so we don't get anywhere. We've got to really practice until we can row it straight to our goal. This takes some time to learn how to do it. It takes 4 or 5 days just to get a basic idea of what it involves. So it's necessary to really get in there and row and to not give up hope, to not stop trying. Especially with something subtle like anapanasati. The first 4 or 5 days, we just get a general taste of it. But then keep going. Then keep working on it until we get to where we can really do it without difficulty. So we can use this system of anapanasati to very systematically remove all I-making and my-making. But that doesn't mean in ordinary life we don't practice the ordinary satipatthanas, whatever we're doing. Washing the dishes, eating, putting on our clothes, being mindful that it's just nama-rupa. Whatever we're doing, seeing things as nama-rupa in order to remove the ego and my-go. Take it all to be just nama-rupa. Don't take anything to be ego and my-go. But in anapanasati, we don't get stuck just at this one word, nama-rupa. We go further, we go deeper into more subtly. But nonetheless, all 16 objects or lessons of anapanasati are nama-rupa. But we go more and more deeply into this nama-rupa, seeing it as not self, as sunyata, as tatata, as a dhammayata. But whatever there are these two systems of mindfulness, the ordinary kind for everyday life, and the very refined, specialized technique of anapanasati. We should learn to be skillful in practicing both. But there are other things we can use in this practice. We can use the 7 factors of awakening, the bojjhanga. There's the 10 sanyas, the 10 regardings of the Giriyamanda Sutta. But now even the monks don't know what these are. Nobody bothers to study anymore. Sati is always central. It's the starting point. When there is mindfulness, being attentive, we can reflect upon all the things to the dhammas, the truths that we have heard, that we have studied. We can reflect upon all the dhammas as they exist in nature, how they are, what they're like. One recalls all the dhammas one has learned, and then one selects, today we're going to practice this one. And then we examine, we scrutinize, we investigate into that Dhamma. This is called the second Bojjhanga, the Dhamma Vichaya Sambojjhanga, investigation of Dhamma, factor of enlightenment. So the first one is to recall all the Dhammas we've studied. And the second is to choose, to select, and to carefully investigate the particular one that we're going to practice. And once we've chosen it, we begin to practice it. We put effort into it. And this is called the Viriya Sambojjhanga, the effort factor of enlightenment. First is mindfulness, then investigation of dhammas, and then effort. Trying, striving, persevering to practice this dhamma. When we are genuinely practicing, when we're really able to practice, when we've chosen the right dhamma, and can truly practice it, then it's automatic that there will be results. And so as we're able to practice this Dhamma that we've chosen through mindfulness, there arises a satisfaction, a contentment with the practice. This is natural and very important that for each stage of our practice, each level, there's a proper satisfaction with the practice. This satisfaction supports the effort. If we don't have this sense of satisfaction, of contentment with the practice, with what we're practicing, then it's hard to sustain effort. This is called piti. This is the satisfaction factor of awakening. This is a very pure, this must be pure and clean piti. No kind of, nothing dirty or no sensual kind of satisfaction. Once this satisfaction arises, things begin to fall into place. Things begin to calm down, to settle down. This is called patsati, or tranquility. The tranquility factor of awakening. When there's this tranquility of the bojjhangas, then samadhi arises. When the body is relaxed and the mind is calm, then the mind becomes firm. It establishes itself firmly and securely. It gathers all its energy together until samadhi develops and is refined, until the factors of jhana appear. And in these factors there are all the factors of experiencing the object, investigating it. There's the piti, the sukha, and the one-pointedness, or ekaggata. But in this samadhi, one isn't just sitting there doing nothing. One isn't some bump on a log. But the mind is tremendously active. It has three qualities. The mind is very strong. So through samadhi, the mind is incredibly strong and active. It's very pure, firm. Then when there's this samadhi, the mind peers deeply. This is called upekkha. Upekkha is usually explained incorrectly in this context. Upekkha is when the mind oversees itself, when the mind peers deeply into its own reality through the power of samadhi, when this upekkha oversees the samadhi in order to look deeply, more and more deeply into the mind. This mind that can look deeply can then wait until it's time to act. Looking deeply. Whether it's the matter of realizing nibbana or just doing difficult work in this world, we can be successful by utilizing these 7 bojjhangas. So with mindfulness, recalling all the dhammas, and then with dhamma vicaya, selecting and investigating the particular dhamma that's appropriate, then putting effort into practicing it, there arises satisfaction which supports that effort. Due to the power of that, the body relaxes, the mind becomes calm, the mind becomes very strong, and then upekkha oversees that mind, looking deeply into things. We can use this for any difficult, tricky activity in life. So in order to do anything efficiently, most effectively, correctly, please use this principle of the 7 factors of enlightenment. All the arahants have used this principle. Once there was an arahant who was sick, and the Buddha came and taught him about these bojjhangas, and he became so delighted that the disease disappeared. Even if one isn't an arahant, one can use this to drive away illness. But if people are fools, it's just like playing a flute to a turtle. The turtle doesn't understand, doesn't benefit from it. So people who don't know the Bojjhangas, when they hear about them, it doesn't do them any good. But if we really understand the Bojjhangas, if the person reciting them understands and the person hearing understands, then it can cure disease. And so we can end ego with these 7 factors. The Buddha taught many, many different ways of ending ego. Choose whichever works. Choose what's most appropriate for you. Anapanasati, the 7 Bojjhangas, the 10 Sanyas or regarding of the Giri Manda Sutta. And then practice until it starts to fall into place. Until ego lessens. Till the tendency to conceit, to the conceit of I am, till this lessons begins to dry up. Develop these Bojjhangas further and further, coming more and more together, falling into place, till we come to the final one. Then with Ubekkha, look deeply, until we know things as they really are. This is the same matter as the 4 idibhatas, the 4 paths to success, and the 4 ways of success. But the 7 factors of enlightenment are more refined, more detailed. So they have these characteristics. Sati Sambojjhanga collects the Dhammas together, and then Dhamma Vichaya selects the most appropriate one. Virya puts forth effort, and then Piti Sambojjhanga supports that effort in practice. Paccati Sambojjhanga calms down body and mind. Samadhi Bojjhanga firmly establishes, gathers the energy of the mind together. And then Ubekkha overlooks it all, surveys it all. So these are the 7 factors of awakening. In order that we can fully understand dependent origination and end ego and mygo, to dry up, get rid of all ignorance. Then there's a special Dhamma to consider. There's something very important to understand about these Bojjhangas, is that for them to work on the highest level, they must depend upon Viraka, depend on Viveka, on solitude, when the mind is not disturbed. Properly, the 7 Bojjhangas must depend upon Viveka, solitude, upon Viraka, fading away of attachment, upon Nirodha, quenching. They don't depend on these, and if they don't incline towards Wotsaka, throwing back, then we'll never be successful. This is why we're not successful in developing the Bojjhangas, because we forget to rely upon Viveka, spiritual solitude, Viraka, the fading of attachment, Nirodha, quenching. So whether the factors of the path, the Noble Eightfold Path, or these seven factors of enlightenment, it's necessary that it's inclining towards these 4 things. The Buddha pointed this out quite a few times, that the practice, if it's going to be successful, must always be inclining for Viveka, Viraka, Nirodha, and Wotsaka. Otherwise our practice will go in the wrong direction. and will not be successful. The 7 bojjhangas can be used for any activities, even ones which aren't very good. To really keep the sila, we can use the 7 properly. On the highest level, we can use the 7 bojjhangas. But if our sila doesn't incline for solitude, fading away and quenching and tossing back, then even morality becomes crooked. When we practice morality to impress others, or just to follow rules, or for the sake of heaven or being born in some paradise, then we don't get all the benefits from sila. Even sila must be heading for solitude, fading away, quenching, and tossing back. So if our practice, whatever we're practicing, if our practice has these 4 characteristics of viveka, viraga, nirodha, and votsaka, then it will penetrate more and more deeply to the goal. And then it ends at nibbana. This is called amata pariyayana, which means to have the deathless as the final goal. When all 4 of these are complete, it means then everything inclines to nibbana. It inclines towards nibbana very smoothly, directly. It's all downhill towards nibbana. Everything flows into nibbana when these 4 factors are complete, are perfect. So practicing for viveka, for viraka, for nirodha, for votsaka, then everything flows towards nibbana. So for the 7 factors of awakening to be correct, they must have these four qualities. So now how will be the 7 factors specifically for ending age? These 7 bojjhangas. When we see what it's like missing them, we can appreciate what value they have. And then we think of all the dhammas, we recall all the dhammas that could eliminate the self, the ego. And then we recollect all the harm of not having Dhamma. We recall the benefit, the value of having Dhamma. We examine the punishment of having age. And then we can appreciate the value of being free of age, and especially to practice vipassana, to see into be mindful of the impermanence, unsatisfactoriness, and not self of age. This is when we're really developing the sati factor of awakening. And then we investigate these dhammas to see exactly how to get rid of ignorance, attachment, and ego. To research carefully how each dhamma, what its range, what its extent is in being able to eliminate age. To see what it's associated with, what results it brings. Seeing which dhammas are the leading factors, the guiding factors and which dhammas are the followers, the supporting factors. Seeing what time is appropriate for this and that. Seeing which are the basic principles, which are the supplementary principles. The investigation of dhammas works very subtly, in great detail, extensively, like this. Investigating dhammas to find out which dhammas are able to eliminate age and how, where, when. Next we move up to the virya factor of enlightenment, that of effort. This means striving, persevering, it means daring, it means courage, to try with effort. This means an effort that is daring, to not be the least cowardly or timid, to put forth effort to strive to the fullest extent of the word energy and effort. We can bring in various support to strengthen this effort. We can use the itibatas, the roads to success. We can use chanda, the appetite for practice. Virya, effort in practice. Citta, attentiveness, and vimamsa, scrutiny. Using these four itipatas, we can perfect the effort factor of enlightenment. And then there's the next factor, which is piti sambojjhanga, the satisfaction or contentment factor. This is like our provisions for the journey. This piti, this satisfaction, supports us, maintains us, nourishes us throughout the practice, enables us to keep putting forth effort. When there is genuine saddha, confidence that it is possible to quench dukkha, that dukkha can really be quenched, this strengthens piti, the satisfaction from knowing more and more clearly, from being more and more truly confident that dukkha can be quenched, that age can be eliminated. This satisfaction here is the kind that arises from success, from being able to do something correctly, properly. There grows a satisfaction. And when this piti nourishes and supports effort, effort never wanes or tires. And if we have satisfaction in ending age, in having no age, if our piti comes most of all from being free of age, then we can end age directly. Piti isn't included as one of the factors of the Noble Eightfold Path, but it works together with samadhi, or it's included in samadhi. As piti becomes more and more perfect and complete, then passaddhi sambojjhanga, the tranquility factor, develops, settles down more and more, calms down. Things fall into place more and more. Everything begins to go very smoothly, orderly, without any hassles or problems. Everything starts to come together. Things work together smoothly. Everything becomes very well integrated. All the main principles and the minor principles fit together properly, everything in its proper place. And there begins to arise strength in being able to end all attachment, all self. All of these factors are building strength, but strength isn't yet complete. So there must be samadhi to perfect it. But as everything comes together, comes into place, fulfills its proper role, then there's true tranquility. And out of this there arises samadhi. And samadhi has the quality of being pure. True samadhi or concentration is pure. The mind is very clean and undefiled. This mind is incredibly firm and stable. There's tremendous strength. Nothing can move this mind. Just like a magnifying glass can focus the rays of the sun so that they become so intense that a fire will burst from a piece of paper. Samadhi is the same way. It gathers and focuses all the power of the mind so that the mind has tremendous intensity, that it can enlighten things. Here this samadhi factor, or samadhi sambojjhanga, this is the same as when the samadhi path factor becomes noble right samadhi, supported by the other 7 factors. When the path becomes perfect, then it has the name of noble right concentration with 7 support. This is the meaning. This is the highest meaning of the samadhi factor of awakening. This is the power of mind being gathered and strengthened and focused for the sake of ending self, ending age. So these 7 factors of enlightening grow and grow until they're able to end age. Till there is true upekkha, the mind that can peer more and more deeply until age is totally ended and eliminated. So we can chant this, we can recite it to remember it. But if people don't know what they're chanting or don't know what they're hearing, then they won't get anything from it. But if we understand this, really understand the bojjhangas and practice them, then they can successfully end age. When the Arahant Giryamanda was sick, another monk came to the Buddha and asked what to do, and the Buddha said to recite the 10 sanya, or the 10 regardings, to the Giryamanda. And when his mind focused, when they recited this to him, and his mind focused attention on these 10 sanya, then the disease, his illness, disappeared. So these high dhammas can end illness. So these dhammas even are beneficial in curing illness. Whether these 10 sanyas, just like as with the 7 factors of awakening. If you're still able to listen, we'll speak some more. There are many things we can talk about. So we'll talk more about the 10 sanya. How can we end age with using the 10 regardings? The first is anicca sanya. The first is the regarding of impermanence, perception of impermanence, and then perception of punishment, perception of unloveliness. There are others, perception of quenching. And the final one is anapanasati. Sanya means to know totally, to know readily. Ya means to know. Sa means together, complete, ready. So anicca sanya is to thoroughly regard, to thoroughly know impermanence, to see the impermanence of the 5 khandhas. to examine the impermanence of each of the khandhas, seeing the impermanence of the five khandhas. This is the regarding, to regard impermanence. Seeing the impermanence of the five khandhas, we can give up attachment to these five aggregates. The second one is anatta sanya, regarding not self, to perceive deeply that things are not self. And this is focused on the ayatana. Anicca sanya emphasizes the five khandhas. Anatta sanya focuses on the ayatana, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, and their six objects. There are these six pairs. Seeing the not self of the eye. See, the eye is not self. It has no self. It doesn't belong to self. But as we were talking about yesterday, when there's contact, the eye sees a form. It's I see the form. The form is mine. But the ear can hear, the nose can smell, the tongue can taste, without needing any atta, any self. All of these things can happen naturally without requiring a self, without being a self. Studying, seeing all the inner ayatana, the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind, as not self. Seeing that their objects have no self. This is the meaning of anatta sanya. Seeing both sides of the ayatana, both sides of the sense media as being not self. This is to abandon time, to abandon the self, to abandon all these things to anatta. The next is asupa sanya, to have sanya, to regard, to perceive things which are not beautiful. For this we have to take the experience of ordinary people. We can't take the experience of the arahant, because for the arahant there's nothing which is beautiful and nothing which is ugly. But now we take the experience of the ordinary people, the things that ordinary people experience to be unbeautiful or ugly, and we regard them, such as the 32 components of the body, which we like to memorize. Hair of the head, hair of the body, teeth, nails, skin, bones, bone marrow, heart, lungs, spittle, urine, feces, the brain and the skull. Regarding all of these, perceiving all of these as being not beautiful, as being unattractive. Seeing all the components of the body, the bowels, the intestines, the bladder, the gallbladder, the pancreas, the synovial fluid, the ligaments, the tendons, the blood. Seeing all of this as unattractive. Because ordinary people, we take all these things to be attractive, especially the hair, the teeth, the nails, the skin. We're always decorating them, spending lots of money, making them trying to make them attractive and beautiful. If we do this intellectually, just thinking, it will help us to lessen a lot of our attachment to the body. But if we do it on the level of vipassana, if we really see clearly that all these things are unattractive, then it can eliminate all these attachments to beauty, to the body. The fourth sanya is Atinawa sanya. Atinawa means the danger, the harm, the punishment. This perception of harm, seeing the harm in things, regarding the harmfulness of things. For example, it's perceiving danger, perceiving, for example, the different diseases, all the diseases that happen to us regularly, seeing the harm and pain, the punishment of them. The physical diseases that we suffer, and then the mental diseases, all the different defilements that come and torment our minds, seeing the harm, the punishment of these various diseases, physical and mental. All of us suffer from them. Examining them, seeing this body, this life as being the basis for these various diseases. Seeing the harm of this incorrectness when things are out of balance, out of harmony, which we call disease. All these difficulties with food, gas, constipation, things going wrong in our intestines. The fifth is Pahana Sanya. This is regarding abandonment. Pahana is to abandon. This is to regard the things we should abandon. This is specifically to abandon kama vitaka, thinking about sensuality, thinking about sensual pleasures and sex. And then apayabata, or payabata vitaka, thinking in with ill will, thought that is negative, thought that is aversion. And then hingsa sanya, or vitaka, abandoning all thoughts of harming, of hurting others. There's these three kinds of stupid thought, a stupid thought conception about sex and sensuality, about aversion, anger, ill will, and about violence, about harming others. Whether we do these intentionally or not, we need to abandon them. Regarding the abandonment of these different kinds of vitaka, of thought, thinking in any way of making things difficult for others, or even for oneself. This is vihingsa vitaka. Thinking about abandoning it is another kind of pahana sanya. The sixth is viraka sanya. 7 is nirota sanya. They're very similar, but the names are different. Viraka sanya is to regard the fading away and dissolving in the mind. When we reflect upon, when we focus on nibbana, then this dissolves and causes the defilements to fade away. We reflect on nibbana by doing the sanya of this is peace, this is sublime, namely the calming of concoctions, the tossing away of upati, the ending of desire, fading away, calming, quenching the coolness of nibbana. If we reflect on all of these, etang, santang, etang, panitang, yatitang, Sappa Sama Sankhara Samato Sap Upajibati Nisako Tanhakayo Virako Niroto Nibbanang. Reflecting on this, this is sublime, this is peace, this is sublime, this is peace. This regarding to reflecting on Nibbana in the mind. This leads to the fading away of the defilement, and then they quench. So Viraka Sanya and Nirota Sanya are basically the same. The eighth is to have the kind of regarding or sanya where we aren't satisfied, we aren't with anything in the world. To not be delighted by anything in the world. To not be infatuated with anything. Sapaloke Ana alai, I can't quite hear the word sanya. All the things that we think are good, positive, regarding them as not, regarding them in such a way that there's no delight with these good things. Seeing that there are all these kinds of things in the world which deceive us into liking them, into being delighted with them. This is the eighth kind of sanya. To not be tricked